Morning, guys. Good morning. Everyone hear me okay? Sound good? Signal good? Connection good? Good, good. Great. Thank you, guys. Okay, welcome to the penultimate webinar of the Wildcrafted Wellness Week. Um, one more session on Thursday, and that then draws this program to a close. So everything shuts down at 10 p.m. on Thursday, this coming Thursday, and then we turn our attention exclusively across to the Wild Medicine Mastery course, which I can't wait to kick off. We've actually got our first live session tomorrow at 11 a.m. So for everyone who's joined, do make sure you either join me live tomorrow or obviously watch the recording. All the recordings are uploaded to the web platform, which you get lifetime access to. Um, so today, in many ways it was hard to try and work out what to put into the last two bonus sessions because there's so much I want to talk about. There's so much we haven't covered because of obviously the brevity of the course. But one of the things that I really did want to make sure we cover was the psychological, emotional, mental side of things. Which is what we're doing today. We're going to be looking at wild herbs that have a real affinity for the psychological and emotional body, and why transdermal therapy herbal baths are absolutely the most effective way of delivering those into the body as a preventative mechanism, but also as an interventional one to treat problems when they develop. So, all the way through the reason I wanted to talk about psychological emotional health is, all the way through last week, every session we've covered has pretty much focused exclusively on the physical body, on physical health, on the prevention of pathology and disease in the physical body. We've looked at Alzheimer's and heart disease and cancers and all these kind of things. But and that's obviously really, really important, but it's only in many ways 50% of the equation, because the whole aim of this week has been about trying to empower as many people to become confident and effective and motivated and inspired to know how to forage for herbal medicines, how to prepare them, and how to prescribe them in the role of a village herbalist, the home herbalist model. This beautiful model, where every home, every village has someone who's able to optimize health and treat common household ailments. And if we're to try and move into that model, and it's a model that the world needs, now more than ever, included within that model, there has to be knowledge about emotional well-being, emotional health, psychological health. There's no point being able to treat all your friends and all your family and your neighbors and work colleagues with physical ailments, colds and flu and headaches and pain and insomnia and all these kind of things, if we're not effective when someone comes to us with overwhelming stress or anxiety or grief or anger or depression or low mood or lacking motivation or all of these things. So if we're to fulfill that role of the home village herbalist, and interestingly, I got such a beautiful response. You may have seen the email I sent out on, where are we? Was it Sunday? I can't remember, about a manifesto for herbal revolution, and why the world needs the re-establishment of the village herbalist model. And I had such a outpouring of support for that. We had dozens and dozens of emails and messages saying about how much that is needed. And it was great to read all of your comments and views around why it was needed. And even more so, it was so inspiring to see so many people here wanting to step into that arena. You know, it's one of, well, actually, so this has inspired me in many ways, because I'm working with my publisher at the moment to on the second book, that the publishing house that published the first book, the cancer book. They want a proposal for another book, and I wasn't thinking about writing this, but maybe now I was doing some work yesterday and thinking maybe this idea of a herbal revolution and re-establishing the village herbalist model as an evidence-based way of transforming healthcare might be something that could be of value. So do let me know if you think that would be a good idea for a book. But this is something we need to know about. I don't think there's probably one household in Britain or the Western, or any world, any part of the world, who doesn't experience stress and anxiety and overwhelm and fear and low mood and all these kind of things. And if we can manage those, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to do. But it's not just about treating emotional dysfunction. In the same way, all of the physical things we've looked at haven't just been about treating physical diseases, they've been about optimizing physical health. Remember the three priorities of why we should forage. What problem does it solve? Boosting health, preventing disease, and allowing us to treat common household ailments. Yes, being able to treat psychological and emotional problems is really important, but that there's also a box around how we boost emotional well-being, and it's about helping us elevate and animate our emotional vitality. And Galen, so lots of people have heard of Hippocrates, the Greek founding father of what we call Western medicine today. His contemporary was another Greek physician called Galen, who was passionately driven by all things herbal medicine, and he's a huge hero of mine. I've got lots of his old treatises. When I was in Crete and Greece exploring all these herbs, he was spoken about again and again and again. And he has this beautiful concept, which is that if we can do things that boost our emotional vitality, and by that, he talks a lot about things like youthful vivaciousness, feeling optimistic, excited about life, feeling positive, and just waking up with this kind of like childlike vivaciousness and vitality for the coming day. That's really powerful in and of itself. But he speaks about how through doing that, it changes the lens through which we see and engage with every other facet of our life, our work, our families, our hobbies, our passions, everything we have to do in life. If we're approaching those things with this mindset, this profound level of emotional vitality and positivity, everything gets better. The bits of life we don't like, bits of life we love, all of the whole arena of life becomes better and happier and more optimistic if we're vital. And it's a beautiful, a lot of what we're talking about actually comes from the Greek system of herbal medicine, and it's something that really resonates with me when I was speaking with the herbalists in Crete, who are classically Galen in terms of their practices. They talk a great deal about this, and they talk about how even the bad parts of life are so much easier if we're emotionally vital. And herbs, there's loads of things that do that. Having good sleep, eating a good diet, exercise, but herbs have an incredibly concentrated ability to induce these kinds of emotional traits. Look at that list at the bottom. Who doesn't want to feel vital and optimistic and emotionally energized and excited and vivacious every day? Something we all aspire to. And herbs have an incredible ability to facilitate that. And in that capacity, there's this beautiful marriage of biochemistry meeting energy. Because when we're looking at herbs in any context, physical, psychological, emotional, disease management, whatever it may be, there's always two sides of it, but it's particularly important when we're looking at mental well-being. So on the one hand, we've got the evidence-based side, the actual biochemistry of the body and how herbs are able to modulate that. So what we would call evidence-based research. So if we take Hawthorn flowers, or we take elderflowers, or we take St. John's wort, or we use lemon balm, how does that physically alter our blood work, our neurology, our chemistry, to reduce stress and anxiety and depression and make us feel more happy and positive and optimistic? So there's the biochemical evidence-based side, which is really important. But there's another side, and it's a side that I think is even more holistic, which is the energetics of the herb. So every herb has an energy. So herbs that come from roots, So any herb that comes from the root of a plant is very grounding, very strengthening, very nourishing. So herbs like dandelion root, herbs like valerian root, they're incredibly strong grounding herbs because that's what a root does to a plant, it does to the body. But when we're looking at herbs for emotional well-being and vitality, the energy we're looking for is herbal components and herbal parts that are very uplifting, very animating, very light, very energizing. And all herbs carry energy. They have an energetic footprint. And if we pair the herbs in a way that we're using the best of the evidence-based biochemistry, if you use this herb, you will get this benefit. And we marry that with the more holistic understanding of the energetics of the herb, then we get this. It's alchemy again. This is all through last week we spoke about herbal alchemy. This is that we're getting the evidence-based benefits of the chemistry plus the energy of the actual benefits of the energy of the herb. You combine those two together and you're able to induce benefits that are almost impossible to harness, I think, in any other way, because it's exponential. And that's what if we're looking at this forage home pharmacy, like most ailments and problems and priorities that we may have as home and village herbalists, across the duration of the foraging season, there are an abundance of herbs that do what we need them to do. If we're looking to treat arthritis, if we're looking to treat acid reflux, if we're looking to treat bad sleep, there are herb after herb after herbs that facilitate that, and they cross the whole foraging calendar. So we've got this continual availability of free wild herbs, and that's particularly true of emotional well-being. We look at things like the flowers. So all flower medicines are very light, they're very uplifting, they're very emotionally energizing. So elderflowers. So elderflowers are one of the big focuses of the live session tomorrow in the first wild medicine mastery course. So because we're going to talk about, elderflowers have profound physical but also emotional benefits. So elderflowers are just coming into season now. Linden flowers, one of my all-time favorite herbs, from the European lime tree, the big, huge lime trees that you see in lots of cities and promenades. Their flowers, beautiful, kind of aromatic, almost honey-like, just the most beautiful herb. It's brilliant for so many ailments, brilliant for emotional well-being. It's one of the herbs that I've used the most in people with cancer who are struggling with stress and anxiety. Dog rose, the common rose, any rose, is brilliant for emotional well-being. Meadowsweet, St. John's wort, probably one of the most famous and evidence-based herbs in the world. And it's often called a rite of passage. For the forager, it's often called a rite of passage. The first time you go out and you find St. John's wort growing in the wild, it's quite difficult to do. It's not endangered, but it grows in. It's a very kind of solitary herb. It doesn't grow on common walkways and hedgerows. You have to actually go out and find it. And where I am, there's nothing around where I live. I have to go up into the South Downs, the national park, which is just north of me. I go there all the time anyway because I love riding my bike there. But you have to hunt it down. But when you find it and you know where it is, and you go there and you make St. John's wort oil and tinctures and teas and things like that, it's a beautiful herb. So there are loads of herbs that we can press into service across the foraging calendar that fulfill the role of being emotional, psychological, mental tonic herbs biochemically in terms of how they change our physiology and neurology, but also energetically. These are the herbs that are uplifting. Okay. Hang on, let me just check comments. Everyone still hear me okay? Sound good? Just give me a thumbs up. I'm being told my signal is unstable, but great. Thank you guys. So, but without, I don't want to I don't want to overcomplicate things. I want to make things as simple as possible. So actually, I want to return to hawthorn flowers here because we've already discussed them. They are everywhere right now. Yeah, we had quite a few people on the Facebook group saying, I can't believe I've never seen hawthorn before. And now they're literally everywhere. We've got a good couple of weeks left of being able to forage and harvest hawthorn, and then it moves on to elderflower. And we've spoken about them already in terms of how to find them. But and we've spoken about them previously in the physical capacity, haven't we? We've spoken about why they're so powerful on optimizing heart health and vascular health and treating heart disease and preventing heart disease. But in the same way that they work on the physical heart, they are one of the most powerful herbs in the world, particularly in the foraging world, for the emotional heart. And again, we can look at the Greek system here, and I do refer back to the Greek system of herbal medicine and foraging a lot because one, I think it's the most powerful and it has the longest history and it has a much more holistic view. And I'm going to go straight into the bottom bullet point. So in the particularly the Aegean region of Greece, they had this beautiful concept, which is when we are using hawthorn flowers, they help us live with the emotional energy of spring, where everything is possible, the days are filled with promise, and the sunlight lasts forever. And in 20 plus years of researching and studying and prescribing herbs like hawthorn, I don't think I've ever seen anything that sums it up better than that beautiful saying that hawthorn flowers help us live with the emotional energy of springtime, where everything is possible, the days are filled with promise, and the sunlight lasts forever. That's what hawthorn does. It is phenomenal for things like increasing emotional optimism and positivity and vitality and boosting our mood and making us feel strong, emotionally strong, empowered, having agency over our life. It's brilliant for cultivating heart-based emotions, things like empathy, kindness, love, caring. It's used as a way of so again that youthful vivaciousness that I spoke about earlier. Hawthorn facilitates that. It makes us feel more positive, more in control, more excited for the coming day ahead and the week ahead. It makes us want to kind of go out and seize life with both hands rather than just plodding through it. It has a again, energetically, it has a very childlike energy in a good way, childlike in terms of excitement and in your engagement and positivity and things like that. So, again, we all want these. These are all qualities we aspire to. And integrating hawthorn into our self-care, not every day. We don't need to be aggressive with this. Remember, we've spoken about the fact that foraging, these kinds of practices play the long game. It's about using them regularly, low dose, regularly, long term, to just keep these benefits at the right level rather than having to be really aggressive with it. So it's gentle, it's sustainable, it's easy. A cup of hawthorn berry tea here, hawthorn flower tea here, a bit of the hawthorn flower syrup there, a herbal bath once a week. It's simple, it's easy. It shouldn't be laborious. But we can then also, it's not just about preventative mechanisms, it's also as an intervention. So yes, we all want those benefits, and that's a preventative approach for keeping ourselves in tip-top emotional well-being. But all of us, myself included, will routinely suffer with less severe issues like stress and overwhelm, all the way through to more clinical problems like anxiety, subclinical depression, and then more social kind of emotional problems like jealousy or rejection or feeling unwanted. So pretty much the full range of psychological emotional ailments: stress, anxiety, overwhelm, grief, fear, rejection, low mood, feeling flat, feeling unmotivated, feeling like you want more vitality in your outlook, your mind, your engagement with life. The hawthorn flowers have this very uplifting energy. So imagine your husband or wife or children get home from work or school having a bad week, they're just feeling a bit flat and lacking get up and go, or they're anxious about something, being able to prescribe a hawthorn flower tea or make a medicated hawthorn bath, which I'll talk about now. Particularly the bath. When you get out of the bath, you feel better than what you did when you got in. Almost without exception. Which is why herbal baths are the best way, really, of using these emotional tonic herbs. But uh, across most of the traditional practice using hawthorn, it's almost always paired with elderflowers because they have very similar benefits but through different mechanisms. So if you have hawthorn flowers, you get these profound benefits. If you just use elderflowers, you get profound benefits. But if you're using both at the same time, you get the benefits of both, but an exponential benefit that only occurs by combining them. And they're just coming into season. I was planning on talking about them last week, but they weren't in season, so I couldn't forage for them. So they're a bit late this year, actually, but they're coming into season now, and they're an absolute highlight. So there are a couple of herbs that are, absolutely essential to forage. So, hawthorn berries, hawthorn flowers, elderberries, elderberry syrup. Elderflowers are kind of definitely in the top 10 that you have to have in, really, because they have so many medicinal properties. Elderflower those herbs that has a foot in health as it does physical. Herbal tea blend that's got elderflowers, yarrow, and plantain, and sometimes mint. And it's one of the most important remedies to have in your home apothecary for cold and flu season. So, sipping 1 cup a day as a prevention. But if a cold or a flu or a throat infection, any kind of seasonal infection hits your house, that tea is absolutely game changing. Elderflowers are antibacterial, or they're antiviral, they're immune modulating, they open up the airways, they help clear mucus, so they're also great for allergies. And again, in the the wild medicine mastery course, we've got a whole series of remedies about prepping for cold and flu season, remedies to prevent infections and treat infections. And there's a big emphasis on elderflowers. So just a selection of the remedies we'll be uploading tomorrow. So elderflower cordial is famous, isn't it? But how do we make a herbal sugar-free version? Elder and plantain herbal steam, which is fantastic for hay fever, allergies, colds, flus. You can add some eucalyptus. It's a brilliant one. Elderflower and yarrow oxymol, really important for cold and flu season. Elderflower body spritz, used a lot for things for hot based problems, like heat based problems, whether that's irritability, anger, rage, menopausal hot flushes, night sweats. That's great. Used a lot in the hot Greek summers to keep everyone cool. Elderflower infused herbal honey. So these are some of the remedies we'll be uploading to the Wild Medicine Mastery course. So for those of you who've joined, um, tomorrow we'll be talking about elderflowers in detail and then uploading all of those remedies. Okay, so do make sure you join. You'll be emailed the instructions for how to join tomorrow morning. Okay, um, so elderflowers are usually used alongside it, but you don't have to use them. And particularly because everyone here, should be well versed in hawthorn now because we discussed it so much last week. So why herbal baths? So it doesn't matter how you're using them, you're going to get benefits. So if you're using hawthorn, and elderflowers in teas, in tinctures, in oxymols, you're gonna get the benefits. But in the context of emotional well-being and mental well-being, whether that's to optimize it or to treat it, herbal baths are absolutely the most effective way of using them, without not by a little bit, but in a profoundly more effective way. Anyone here tried herbal baths or made or has used herbal baths out of interest? I'd like to know if people here have kind of experimented with these. A lot. Okay, that's cool. So there's a variety of reasons why herbal baths are exponentially more effective for managing these kinds of problems. The first one is that baths are in and of themselves relaxing, aren't they? If you have a normal bath without herbs, it's calming, it just relaxes us. But as soon as we add the herbs, we get a much more effective impact. The first reason is that you can consume a massively higher dose of herbal compounds through baths than you can internally. There's a limit to how many teas and tinctures and internal oral herbs you can take. But transdermally through the skin, you can get kind of 4, 5, 6 times more therapeutic impact because you're absorbing it through the skin rather than having to swallow it and then process it through the liver. So transdermal therapy is the absorption of medical compounds through the skin, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All of the herbs you would typically use in baths, things like hawthorn flowers, elderflowers, yarrow, they're water soluble. Their most medicinal compounds are water soluble, which means they extract into water very effectively. So when you get into a herbal bath, that bath is able to absorb all of the active medicinal properties. So very high concentrations of the medicinal compounds. And then we add the bioavailability. So our skin is the biggest organ in the body. And if you're sat in a hot herbal bath up to your neck, 90% of your surface area is underwater. If every square inch of your skin below your neck is in contact with water soluble herbal compounds, the volume that you absorb is so tremendously high. When you get out of the bath, your body will have changed, particularly because in a hot bath, all of your pores open, which means you absorb even more. So this isn't, a herbal tea can take a couple of hours to work. you know this is working within minutes. It's entering the blood within minutes. If you're taking any oral medicine, you have to swallow it. It goes into the stomach, you've got to digest it, you've got to pass it into the small intestine, it's going to cross the gut barrier into the blood, and then it starts working. That takes time. If you're using a herbal bath, it's into the blood almost instantly. So you're getting significantly higher volumes of herbs entering the body very quickly. So if you get into a bath super stressed, super anxious, super down, or whatever it is, when you get out of the bath 20 minutes later, your biochemistry would have been altered by those herbs in a way that will typically, induce a discernible benefit. And the reason for that is, if you look at that, I don't want to go into a very detailed lesson on anatomy on a Tuesday morning, but just quickly, if we look at the skin there, we've got the epidermis, which is the top layer of the skin, a bit you can pinch, and below that you've got the dermis, and in the dermis you've got billions of capillaries and billions of nerve endings. So think about morphine skin patches, HRT hormone patches, nicotine patches, new types of blood pressure meds. How do they work? You put the medicine on the skin, it absorbs through the skin into the second layer of the skin, the dermis, and then it's absorbed into the nerves and into the capillaries, which means that within minutes, it's entering through the entire nervous system and the entire circulatory system through the veins and the arteries. So if your whole body surface is sitting in this really well constructed herbal bath, the volume you are absorbing through your skin, like I said, is so high. And it's because it's able to enter the blood vessels, be absorbed by the blood vessels, and absorbed by the nerve endings, in the same way that morphine or, like I say, HRT patches are. So mechanistically, this is one of probably the most powerful means of herbal prescribing. And what's so interesting is that it's really never gained the traction in the West. Lots of herbalists I know in the West have never really used or prescribed or advocate herbal baths. If you look at Greek systems of medicine, like Hippocrates himself, this was his favorite form of prescribing because he realized it induced a bigger effect. So very, very strong, very mechanistically effective, brilliant for things like aches and pains, inflammation, joint problems, but particularly good, number one, for treating emotional problems, but also optimizing it. So if you're having one or two herbal baths a week, and you can use like a washing up bowl, because your feet have got a very high concentration of nerve endings and capillaries, so you can just use foot baths. One or two baths, a week is going to really help just keep your emotional outlook and emotional health in tip-top condition. So mechanistically, it's incredibly strong. And I've used this approach a lot in people living with cancer who are struggling emotionally, and the feedback is, universally how effective it is, universally positive. So in terms of how you make a herbal bath, the first thing to do is the first thing to say is you don't actually add the herbs into the bath, because that makes it messy. It blocks the drains. It's not as strong. So firstly, you need to make a really super strong herbal tea. So what that would look like, actually, everyone hear me okay? Sound still good? Connection still good? Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Sorry, I know I keep on asking that. I just want to make sure it's not cutting out. So what you would do is get a couple of handfuls, one or two handfuls of either fresh or dried herbs. So you might go out today and you just get a small bag of fresh hawthorn flowers or elderflowers or whatever it is. So whether they're dried, drying them is great because it means you can use them all year once they're out of foraging season. So either way, one or two small handfuls of fresh or dried flowers, put that into a large mixing bowl and pour over about a pint ish of just off boiling water. Okay, so herbs into a bowl, pour over a pint of boiling water or just off boiling water, give it a really good stir, and put a lid on it. You must put a lid on it, because otherwise all the steam will carry the essential oils out of the herbs and you'll lose them. So boiling water goes on, give it a stir, put a lid on, and then if you need to use it quickly, you can use that after about 15 to 20 minutes. But ideally, what you would do is something called the morning method, which is where in the morning, while you're making breakfast or whatever, make it in the morning, put a lid on it, and leave it all day. So it's macerating and infusing for 8, 9, 10 hours. So by that time, it's going to be incredibly strong. After about 15, 20 minutes, it's going to be therapeutically active, but probably not as strong as it should be if you leave it longer. So if you need to use it urgently, you can just do it after 20 minutes. But ideally, if you're going through a stressful time or you just want a bit of a lift, make it in the morning and leave it all day. Either way, once that time has passed, strain that bowl of super concentrated, 1 pint of super concentrated herbal tea, strain it through a sieve into another bowl, so that you've separated the herbs from the liquid, and then pour that liquid into a deep hot bath. And you have to mix it really well, because what you want is every square inch of your skin being in contact with a small amount of the herbal compound. So you want to really mix it together really, really well. Hop in the bath, and you need to stay in the bath ideally for 20 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, but 20 minutes is the therapeutic dose, because after 20 minutes, the amount of transdermal compounds you would absorb through the skin have reached critical mass. So 15, 20 minutes, ideally 20 minutes. If you analyze your biochemistry, your blood work for that bath and after that bath, you are a different person. And it is, I've used it in my nephews before exams, when they were sitting their GCSEs and A levels. One of them, particularly my eldest nephew, quite a naturally anxious person, using them in the evening before exams just to calm things down, dial things down. Um, I've used this a lot a few years ago. It's the biggest. I do lots of in-person speaking events and retreats and whatnot. But I once gave a talk to about, or just under 1,000 people, actually, 800 and I think whatever it was. And I was really, really nervous about it because it was the biggest group I've ever spoken to. And I remember it was in Germany. I remember, you know, taking dried herbs with me. So I took dried herbs with me because I wanted to use a. It wasn't just about anxiety. It was about cognitive clarity and memory and focus. And I was drinking the tea. I had a herbal bath in the evening. I had a herbal bath in the afternoon because it was an afternoon session. And it's just a way of keeping things leveled. It was keeping things nicely in control. So if you, it doesn't matter what it is, if you want to lift, if you want to reduce stress, whatever it is, within 20 minutes, you will, you would feel discernibly better. And if you do that a couple of times a week, it's such a beautiful way of creating that optimistic, positive, empowered mindset. So those instructions will be uploaded to the resources page, so that I think we've got a video as well of how to make a herbal bath. So the next task, which might not be a task because you might already have it, is hawthorn. Like I said, hawthorns are in full bloom now. The flowers, anyway. Depending upon where you are in the south, where I am, where they blossom early, there's probably another 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. So and then they're gone. And you can buy them online really easily, dried hawthorn flowers, but they're so abundant. Having as many jars as you can filled with dried hawthorn flowers to see you through the year is time well spent. It's free. It's super easy to dry. All the instructions for how you dry it are available on the resources page. And then what I would say, keep some fresh. Keep a couple of handfuls of fresh hawthorn flowers, and have a go of making and using a herbal bath, and see how you feel. It is so uplifting. It's so you come out of it almost buzzing. So that's your next task, and this is a key um, tool in the arsenal of a home herbalist. Whether you're joining me in the Wild Medicine Mastery course or not, whether this is the end of the journey for you this week or whether you're continuing, this is a really important part of our work. So that if someone in your family or a friend or whoever is really suffering with stress or anxiety, knowing how to help that person alleviate their suffering. Here's a jar of hawthorn berries, hawthorn flowers. This is how you make it. You have a couple of cups of tea a day, have a herbal bath every couple of days. You can help people overcome these problems. And it's a really important part of the village herbalist, home herbalist, model. And if everyone, if no one got anything out of this course other than that, and you were able over the coming weeks and months to alleviate the suffering of someone who was suffering with emotional problems, that to me would have made all of this worthwhile. Because you would have helped someone in an evidence-based way to better cope with their emotional problems than they would have done if you didn't know this stuff. So keep this one in the forefront of your mind, because the chances are you'll be using it an awful lot. Like I say, for those of you who have joined me in the Wild Medicine Mastery, we've got the first webinar at 11 a.m. tomorrow, where we're diving into elderflower. We're diving into comfrey and why comfrey is in perfect foraging season now. We're talking about the culinary herbalism priorities for May. We've got some amazing dandelion and nettle culinary recipes, things like energy balls, smoothies, curries. So we've got quite a lot going on tomorrow on that course platform. So everyone who has joined, the Facebook group opens tomorrow, and the first webinar is tomorrow. If you can't make that, they're all recorded, and you obviously get lifetime access. Okay, so and anyone who's thinking of joining as well, I've got to say the doors close in 48 hours. Okay, so if you want to continue all things herbal foraging and medicine making through the foraging calendar, it would be an absolute privilege to have you join me. It's not quite the end, because we have one more live session together on Thursday, and it will be the closing ceremony before the doors close at 10 p.m. on Thursday evening. So more details to follow. Any questions about foraging, herbal medicines, herbal baths, do let me know. If not, have a lovely day, and I will see you all soon.